Face front, true believers, and welcome to the culmination of the Samaritan path Netflix started us down, where we recap the journeys of the Devil of Hell's Kitchen, the PI who stood up to the Purple Man, the righteous ex-con turned Power Man, and the kid with the glowing fist. In a show where we uncover the stories the Avengers might not disclose, but we will, as we analyze the Marvel microcosm and finally start Divulging Defenders. This time we're talking about episode 2, Mean Right Hook. That's right, Dragon. How you doing tonight?
Super.
Ha. Would you even say you're in a heroic mood?
Don't say the H word.
I didn't say the H word, Jessica. I said a variation on the H word. Oh boy, so Dreg, we've had some technical issues on this podcast, but you know what? That's just made me kind of rewatch the episode every time we've been scheduled to do it. So I'm pretty fresh with this. This episode is I've rewatched this episode more than I probably should have, but it's very fresh in my head, so I think we should have a fun time discussing it. I think we should have an easy time discussing it. I think it should go by quickly. Do you want to get right into it with the plot?
Yeah, let's get right into it with the plot.
Okay.
All right. It doesn't feel the same unless you kind of say it dramatically, Tiki. You gotta,
Okay, well, let's get right into it with the plot.
All right, folks, here's what happens in a nutshell. So, where we last left, episode 1 of Defenders, Hell's Kitchen and Harlem were rocked by an earthquake, raising a lot of questions, and as we, the audience, know, was orchestrated by the Hand to unlock one of Kunlun's secrets. As this happens, our heroes are kind of put down are kind of led down their arcs for the season. They're kind of been kicked off by this big event in New York. Matt Murdock, he's grappling with his vigilante addiction. Luke Cage gets a lead on the recruiter of youths in Harlem, the dreaded White Hat. Not White Hat! Let's see, Luke Cage, while he's doing that, let's just say he runs into Iron Fist, and the two quite literally hit it off.
Oh, yeah.
And Jessica Jones, meanwhile, she's looking into let's call it the John Raymond conspiracy, which leads to a very interesting interrogation with Misty Knight after his eventual death in the episode. And before the discussion really kicks off between Misty and Jessica by the episode's end, it's Blind Matt Murdock to the rescue. And that's the episode.
All right. So, Dragon, the reason why we're doing this in the first place, of course, because she's coming back in about a month or two, investigating Jessica Jones. Like I said, Dragon, we're not just pulling this up out of nowhere. Jessica Jones season 2 is coming back in early March, so that's why we're kind of building up to that. Now, Punisher is good, but it's its own thing, I feel like. It almost feels kind of disconnected from the rest of this. Whereas Jessica Jones, of course, you and me both kind of agree she's one of, if not the MVP of the season. So let's talk through her story. What do you think about her storyline here?
Sure. So let's see. Here's where Jessica kind of goes in this episode here. So she's very much paying the price for her heroism right out the gate with the C4 tip, because basically she went into John Raymond's apartment at the end of. Towards the end of the last episode, she discovered all this C4, all this explosives, and in this episode, where we pick up with her, she's done the responsible thing. She's called in the cops, and of course, where we with her at the beginning, she's like cursing out the cops, and she's like really very surly with them, like, "Oh God, why am I here? It's a waste of my time." And it's just kind of like this, man, you don't see this every day.
Can I just really also quickly point out, I really like the Trish bits this episode.
Oh yeah, Trish. Yeah, by all means, we got to talk about Trish in the Jessica Jones segment here. So absolutely, yeah, Trish. She's very well utilized with Trish talk. It's a good way of kind of being reactionary to to the events going on in the MCU. We did utilize that with Luke Cage, where we even had Trish in a cameo and Luke Cage doing something very similar.
Mm-hmm.
I like how we have that more in the forefront here. Trish is like there. We get a bit of that hand conspiracy going on with, hey, downplay the earthquake. We're getting it from the network heads. Don't talk about the earthquake.
This is gonna sound silly, Dragon, but I just really like professional Trish with her glasses and everything, just being good at her job.
That's nice. Speaking, they go back to the whole Jessica paying the price for heroism, where again that's something that she constantly combats, and that takes it to kind of the classic comics route of Jessica Jones, which I love seeing that brought to the show and just the Netflix MCU with Jessica Jones, where the cosmic joke with Jessica Jones as a character in the comics that ever since those famous speculatory pitches we did back in the day. For these 4 shows, I always thought we were going to get more of that in Jessica Jones. The fact is, we still got a little bit like here, where the gag is Jessica Jones always gets the raw deal of the Marvel universe, and we have that idea here with her being very unlucky. So again, hey, she turns down a case, and the guy says, she gets wrapped up in this case, and as the episode goes forward, she's targeted by the cops, and she's looked funny because she has powers, because she's kind of looked to as a hero despite not really being one, and of course the guy offs himself in her apartment, so she gets wrapped up in all. She doesn't want any part of this miniseries, but she's going to be wrapped up in it anyway.
Which is really the beautiful part of Jessica in this whole show, is that, like, by all accounts, the story could take place with her not in it, but she just adds such a layer of sass to it that it's like, she's just the spice that the story needs.
Because essentially, you're right, Tiki, she is that grounding element. She is like kind of calling everything on the absurdity of things. Like, you get a little bit of that with Luke Cage later on, but it's for the majority of the series, it's Jessica Jones kind of having that critical view of like, do you guys realize what you're doing? You're a blind ninja, that sort of stuff. Here, she's just going to point out the ridiculousness of all this, and that's the marriage we have with the Netflix shows. It's kind of realistic, it's kind of a practical world we're living in the MCU, but at the same time, it still has the optimism and kind of the off the page quality. So it's a great marriage we have, and Jessica Jones falls right in the middle there, getting kind of the gray storm cloud of the line a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should talk about Jerry Hogarth a little for a moment here. Let's talk about Jerry Hogarth. She appears.
Yeah, I like how aggressive she is with trying to stop Jessica from, getting herself into trouble.
I like that because Jessica, she's kind of landed herself in a nifty situation here because, because again, there's like an act of terrorism in New York, and especially kind of on a big scale, which again could basically, it's a more ground level version of of the incident. But again, it's a mysterious earthquake, which is a big event that will rock a city. Again, kind of in the not exactly alien fueled 9/11 that we had with the Avengers.
Mm.
And Jerry Hogarth, I love this. Well, it seems like, again, maybe Jerry Hogarth's kind of grown as a character as we saw her do in Iron Fist. Because again, that's why I love Jerry Hogarth in Iron Fist. I really do. I thought she was great in that. And here again, we have that growth, but at the same time, it makes you wonder: is she on the path to being a better person, or is it, as Jessica calls her out on, is it just her looking out for her interest of like, hey, someone who is easily linked to me, my private investigator, I hire as like a freelancer. If she
almost
gets
kind of like a Goodman-esque move, right?
It's very Goodman-esque. It's like a question of, is she on like a Jimmy McGill path, or is she purely Saul Goodman? It's very much that.
Oh,
So speaking of the predicament Jessica finds herself in, let's talk about the Misty night of it all. So Misty really mixes it up with Jessica Jones in this episode.
Yeah. I just, it's just one of those fun things about the potential of this series that I wish was a little bit more prevalent, but I feel like in terms of the team ups, we get the characters interacting with side characters more in these first couple episodes, and then slowly the kaleidoscope begins to unravel itself, and we get the main interactions. But it's a smart thing to kind of deal, like with Jessica being like one of the least law-abiding of the Defenders, to be dealt with the most competent of the law enforcement people in the Defenders verse.
Right. I will say this though: the one knock I do have against this episode is kind of with Misty, and again, it's not something that's like bad. It's just something that's iffy. And again, just considering the high standard we always hold these Netflix shows up to, um,
Well,
I'm just saying it's still that's why people feel the way they do about that one because it's held up to a high standard.
oh,
The point is, we do hold these up to a very high standard, thanks to the wonderful season that is the first season of Daredevil. Anyway, anyway, I'm a little iffy on Misty Knight here, the way she treats Jessica Jones, because she does treat her a little. She treats her very callously. By the
well, I
end,
mean, think about it. Think about it. It's like, she's swearing out the cops when she first meets Misty. She steals evidence from the crime scene. It's, I don't know. I feel like it's a little understandable why Misty's a little surly with Jessica.
I got that, but here's the thing though, and again, I'm iffy on because again, it does adjust itself. I'm just saying that the reason I'm iffy on is because it seems like Misty is somewhat backpedaling since her experience in Luke Cage at the very end, because she's in the interrogation room and obviously something more is going on here, and she can see that, but like mainly the moment where she arrests Jessica Jones, where it seems like she's. It seems like she should be more in kind of like a helpful capacity in that moment, where she just seems more of like, hey, I'm gonna kind of deflate the balloon here. Hey, there's someone who we should be pursuing. No, not really. You're coming downtown. It just seems like a little bit of backpedaling. Like Misty went through all of this with Luke already. You didn't trust him, then eventually you trusted him. But again, we do kind of correct in that moment towards the very end where Jessica's like, she's saying, look, just talk to me, but. I don't know. So, Misty, again, she has a few moments in that interrogation scene towards the very end where it's, basically beyond the trailer moment. Where, again, she's calling Jessica Jones like, oh, and now he's dead. And that's just that's appropriate callousness, which is that moment where she's, Jessica Jones is like using her knowledge of the law here to say, okay, am I under arrest? Like, oh, come on, don't hit me with that BS. It's like, come on, Misty, why you gotta be so?
Right. At least Jessica calls her on it.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. So again, last thing with Jessica is Jessica, where she ends up on the grand hold by the end of this is that she's wrapped up in the Hands conspiracy firsthand with her battle or kind of her pursuit of Elektra, which of course Elektra in the fray is very much as kind of the unstoppable force in her introductions in these two episodes.
She's kind of like the Jaws of the first two episodes.
Very much so. And again, we kind of kick off the plot, and that's why I'm definitely, there's a lot more positive to say than the one negative I have with Misty in a few moments in this episode is that, we do get the plot going with Jessica. Now she has another death on her head, very much like the first episode of Jessica Jones with Hope's parents, with Hope Schlottman's parents in the elevator.
Sure. Okay, with that in mind, Dragon, it's time to start interpreting Iron Fist.
Yes.
Oh boy.
So I feel Danny in this episode, he shoulders.
Well, a lot of people died because I left Kunlun. Well, I'm not going to get myself involved in a team.
Really? You're just come on.
Yeah, really.
Anyway. Danny definitely is at some of a disadvantage in this episode because he's shouldering a lot of the plot here, and I feel that shows with Rand in this episode where he's finding more bodies. I get what they're going for here. He found more bodies when basically he and Colleen they're picking up from the first episode where they were overseas and Elektra killed essentially one of the last members of the Chase, Styx guys.
Mm-hmm.
And they go to New York and they basically find out, hey, that guy recognized your Iron Fist, and they don't know what the Chased are, so they're kind of on the path of discovering what the heck the Chased are. So they find a whole bunch of other dead people who were defenders of Kunlun, i.e., the Chased. And I do like visually, and again, the direction I think is really good in this episode. We had a Jessica Jones director on this, by the way, S.J. Clarkson. And anyway. So what I'm saying, we have like the evoked imagery of like Danny Rand. We have his trauma in that first episode where he's haunted by not knowing what the heck went on in Kunlun because he can't return there. You can never come back, Danny.
God.
Don't touch the watch. Okay, I'm sorry, it's a different movie. But you know what I'm saying? No, but seriously though, it's that idea he's haunted by the fact that he holds like any bad stuff that's happened in Kunlun because he was the protector and he wasn't there. And I like how we're evoking that visually. So I get what they're going for. They're linking his guilt to Kunlun with the carnage before him, which is leading him to be a little impulsive. So I like that we're visually explaining that, but still he is shouldering a lot of the plot, which makes for like. Iron Fist is pretty much paint by numbers until he meets Luke Cage in the episode. That's pretty much what Iron Fist is.
Let's face it, is one of the, maybe top 10 moments of the Marvel Netflix stuff so far.
It is. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying it's a slow, it's kind of a very basic build until we get to the great payoff of, them meeting each other for the first time. So let's see. But again, I like that we're at least showing his. I'm sorry?
Anything with Colleen this episode?
I'm trying to think because I want to make sure I'm not getting to the majority of the Colleen stuff's really in the next episode. So mainly with Colleen, her sword knowledge comes in really handy because you kind of recognize like the signs of the chase through the swords. Essentially, like, okay, these guys are ordinary warriors, And again, I like that. Again, I like directing, Danny Rand's impulsiveness and at least seeing how it's correlating a lot better than it did in the original show, because the original show they really didn't know where they were going with Danny Rand. Here at least they at least have an end game, and we know that by the last episode. We know that Danny at least has he does have an arc. They figured out an arc for him this season.
Thank God. Okay.
Let's see. And of course, the impulsiveness leads to an impulsive interrogation, which of course leads to an awesome fight and confrontation.
Which leads to us, Dragon, unlocking Luke Cage.
Luke Cage!
Yeah. I'm Luke Cage! Listen up, Comic-Con, and listen well. My name is Luke Cage.
Power Man.
Got it. All right.
Anyway.
So Luke Cage's story continues to be an after-school special, and I love it. I
know. Oh my God! I tell you, the first 3 episodes of Defenders, even probably more after it. I'm just saying so far. Let's just say the first 3 episodes. My God, Luke Cage.
I mean, honestly, it's mostly the first 3 episodes because once he meets up with the Defenders, it's kind of like it sort of becomes a group show. But these first 3 episodes, it's totally like after-school special central.
Luke Cage is so freaking awesome. He is just I can't get enough of Luke Cage. I really can't. He's so great, and he gets again. We're going to build to the whole plot line with Luke kind of watching out for the Miller family, because Candace Miller was Misty Knight's lead for taking that Mariah Dillon, and she was killed by Shades to ensure there was no trace, there was no way of bringing them down. So the point is. Because of that, Misty asked Luke to mentor the other surviving, the one surviving child, because another Miller child died out of the 3. So now he's looking out for Cole Miller.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to see where that leads. Before we get there, let's talk about where we pick up with Luke at the beginning of this episode. And I love right off the bat they have me, because again we ended the episode 1 with Luke Cage saving the widow. I keep wanting to say widow. I know it's not widow because it's not about a marriage thing, but the grieving Miller mother Dolores. So I love how he saved. I'm pumping my fist so much in the air from that first episode. He saves Dolores. Man, I love that. And we continue that imagery where Luke and Claire, and this is so sweet and so kind of Luke Cage as the pops of Harlem, and I love it. Where he's picking up the debris from the earthquake, the damage in Harlem.
It's such a simple effect, right? To just have like probably a hollowed out styrofoam piece of debris and have Luke Cage lifted up, and it works so well.
It's so simple, and I love that while he's doing that, Claire is like providing free medical care to people who are injured. That's perfect, man. They have my money so much of Luke Cage. Like, okay, more Cage.
And of course, I love the sweet moment where Claire is kind of like giving him the pointers on where to find, where to find the bad people that he wants to investigate. Which bars are the hot spots.
It's the Paradise Bar with everyone's favorite, Turk Barrett.
Oh my God.
So I like that we get to see Luke doing some detective work. And then, he goes to the bar he's doing. It's very noir. And again, we do know there's a Harlem noir influence on Luke Cage a lot of the time, especially with the fact that we've seen Luke Cage does love to read Harlem novels. Harlem Noir novels. And basically is looking for White Hat. And I got to tell you, I'll say this much: White Hat, I love the build around White Hat. Unfortunately, the payoff in retrospect, it's a little bit of a, because initially I thought White Hat was going to be a bad guy for Luke Cage season 2 when they first announced, like,
I did too, and then it's like he just kind of falls off.
Yeah, we basically will find out White Hat's he's kind of exclusively linked to the hand. He just doesn't really go far beyond that. So that said, he's more of a.
But for the time being, though, Dragon, I could just picture White Hat as just like a classic, like 80s G.I. Joe villain or something like that.
I mean, the way that Turk Barrett describes White Hat as as Turk Barrett describes him, an African brother who is wearing all white, and he has he has alligator shoes. Points. This is like it's a unique character for Harlem, even. So that's kind of what he describes White Hat as, and it's like paints a picture, paints an interesting picture.
Oh yeah.
So again, just with Luke, I love that he's dealing with Harlem's youth being manipulated. It just feels like a classic Luke Cage story. This whole kind of Miller plot that is turning into Luke Cage trying to fill Pop's shoes, and they have this beautiful. We have these beautiful scenes with him and Claire where he's basically saying, "I'm just trying to do what Pops would do," or "I'm just it's are you getting paid for this job?" Again, intimating heroes for hire. That wonderful.
Yes.
And I like that he's reaching a middle ground as he addresses it here, where again he's like on a mission to save this kid before. So it's basically it's a pro bono job. So he's not quite there yet, where he's going to try to make a business out of what he's doing here. But again, he's just trying to honor his mentor in Pop with that regard, and again doing what he would do in saving the youth of Harlem from someone who's manipulating them and steering them down dangerous path, which, as we know, is in direct contrast to Pop's teaching, like keeping the kids off the streets, keep them away from the bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see. I'm sorry, I'm trying to see what else we have. Again, I like that he. I love that he looks out for the gray amongst the dead Chase situation. So after his interrogation, basically where we end up with him and butting heads with Iron Fist on a character level is, he's looking out for the gray in between this encroaching hand versus the Chase to war that's going on here between the Iron Fist going after the hand and not caring about the flunkies, where Luke Cage, and again, will be established so well, Luke Cage's story here, that again, these are just kids looking for jobs here. These are just kids being steered down the wrong path. They're lackeys. They don't deserve to get the crap beat out of them, or being kind of laid up in hospitals their families can't afford to put them in.
Right, and there's a great moment that illustrates that, but I kind of want to tiptoe around it for now, of course, because it's hard to talk about Luke Cage and Iron Fist in this episode without getting to the moment. So
you're right, but again, we just have it. Might have it more visually communicated here than it will be dialogue later on. So but mainly the altercation itself speaks to Luke realizing, okay, Luke Cage kind of speaks for the show, saying, "Okay, the buck stops here. Get off. Stop being impulsive and fighting this kid unlikably. I'm going to stop you from doing that because this is
right.
We ain't friends yet, Danny."
All right. So shall we move on?
Yeah. Okay. Well, the last thing we got to address with Luke, and this is important.
Yeah, sure.
Is that, and we bridge on this more so later on, but this is very important here, is that we have this really memorable shot where Luke, as he's kind of hashing it out with Iron Fist, let's say, at the end, the cops come and Luke is a newly freed man from prison, and I love the shame on Luke Cage, where he feels so ashamed of himself for hesitating to go up the bat for the kid, to kind of stand up for him, but he had to run, and he had that instinct in him to
you're right. That is a good subtle moment there.
And I love that. I think what we're saying with that is he's kind of like a failed. In that moment, he feels like a failed Pops and a failed hero. In that moment of I was there, I knew I had the best of intentions, but when it came down to it, when I really could have stood up, when I really could have stepped up for him, I didn't, and he's ashamed of himself. That's great acting on Mike Coulter in that scene, man. Oh boy, it's a beautiful little moment. I just want to highlight there. Okay.
Yeah, no, glad you mentioned that. Okay. All right, let's move on to Discerning Daredevil. Come on, dear.
Oh yeah. So
it's not really in this episode a ton. Mostly he just kind of has the, the big scene with Foggy and kind of just ruminating on, on his role as Daredevil, the will he, won't he of putting on the suit.
I like how we're using our big guns sparingly with Daredevil in the beginning here. I like that. I like how they're being strategic with that.
Yeah, certainly.
So yeah, we what I love what they're doing here is that we're exploring vigilantism, his vigilantism instinct, without going in too much in the details. You want to save some really cool stuff for a little later on, but
of course.
I love how we explored the vigilantism bug, the vigilantism instinct as an addiction that Matt succumbs to, let's say. And again, he's kind of trying to fight that. He's trying to get better. And, Elektra's death has really put his actions into perspective. And what I really think, and I think the real question of the season with Matt, especially at the beginning of the season, is Daredevil an outlet for his sin? That's the dilemma. Like, am I just using Daredevil to kind of like take out my guilt on other people?
Mm.
Like, basically, am I trying to help people anymore, or am I just trying to take out my frustration or my guilt, or like the bad thing? It's kind of the age-old kind of Matt Murdock. He's kind of going out there and make the world a better place, but at the same time, he's doing kind of some devilish things and always some sin-worthy things. And it's always kind of that you have that balance going on. Now that balance is even more out of whack, just kind of like, because now there's a point where Hell's Kitchen doesn't really need a Daredevil, but he's still kind of combating that, and we have Foggy in the mix. Though. Let's talk about Foggy a little bit there.
Yeah, I love what Foggy's trying to do for Matt here. It's it's a really, dare I say, heroic action on Foggy's part. A very noble gesture.
Yes, I love that. I love how Foggy is there for his friend, and I love that. I love how much we've grown with Foggy. One, I love that he has. I love that he finally got the haircut. By the way.
Right.
Because ever since the first episode, because again, Foggy Nelson, he doesn't have long hair like he does in the show. And I was like, okay, well, that's a way to go with Foggy. I just wonder if he ever get a haircut, and he finally did, and he looks just like Foggy from the comic now. So they got that. But seriously, I love that Foggy. We've always had, through the 2 seasons of Daredevil, it's been, him finding out that Matt's Daredevil, and then finding out, basically trying to come to grips with that in a very realistic, practical way. And now we're at a point where he respects that Matt's trying to kind of trying to get past that.
It's like a friend helping another friend through a drug addiction or something.
And again, that's what I love. What we're doing, that vigilantism angle there, where again he's trying to help me. He realizes it's not a perfect solution, but he says, "Look, Matt, it's obviously it's not a solution by any stretch, but I love that it's an attempt, and he acknowledges that it's an attempt. It's probably not going to work, but I can just say that I tried, and I respect that."
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I like that thematically. I like how you can kind of see how Matt's kind of doomed for failure in fighting this addiction, where he's kind of he's half in and half out with it, and that's he's basically taking a half measure in life right now. And that's kind of what Foggy is presenting him with almost. Again, it's kind of like a half in, half out solution in trying to help with Matt's recovery and retirement there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like doomed to fail in that, you can't necessarily quit it cold turkey, but at the same time, you can't just, you can't have that bug now and again and fight, to save people at the same time. You can't just necessarily leave them to suffer. So it's a very complex situation. We show that without being too dialogue driven about it. It's like one heartfelt scene and some great visuals.
And of course, the episode before it really hit home, kind of like, hey, if you're super sensitive to hearing, you're going to hear all the bad stuff that's going on in the city, and it's going to mess with your head. And
profoundly, that's the origin of Daredevil, as we had explained in that Nelson versus Murdock episode, where he explained that as a kid, I'd grow up and I'd put stories to things, and I heard all the bad stuff that went on in the city, and I could picture all of that, and that's what drove him to be Daredevil. And again, that's a powerful way. We ended that first episode where he hears that ever-present call, and the city needs him more than it ever does, and he leaps out heroically.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so of course he makes a surprise return at the end of the episode. We'll get to that later. Let's move on to
so if he answers a call to what he doesn't even know yet, and what he doesn't know yet is it's the hand.
Yes,
or accurately,
fingerprints of the hand.
Yes.
All right, so this moment with Alexandra and the symphony was very heavily advertised, right?
Yeah. I mean, we knew she was coming from a very kind of high society place, so it was kind of shown in the marketing, yeah.
Of course, very cryptic, like, oh, it's nothing. It's just stuff I picked up along the way. Like, do you get it? Do you get that she's lived for hundreds of years, Dragon?
Yeah. So I love that with the hand overall. Before we kind of, I guess we break down directly, I just want to say I love that overall. I love the plan hits a literal wall, and that Alexandra is wise enough to realize that it's not a wall, but it's a door built by Kanlan to house their secret that the hand is trying to crack. We have this great bit, just a transition from Alexandra, who again is again, I love the mystery, I love the mysterious build with Alexandra, and again we have they have that refinement, and again I love that without being kind of directly stated. I like that it's there that again this woman who kind of houses herself in skyscrapers where everyone else is like a one floor apartment, or like everyone else is on the ground level. She is like kind of like housing herself in these grand structures, like these architectural masterpieces.
Right.
Where again, she's more in the like if they're defending a city, she represents kind of a city that is like devoid of like the personal interaction.
She does have a very kingpin quality to her in that regard.
She does, and again, I love the heck out of that. And with speaking of which, we have this great moment with Gao, and speaking of Kingpin, I'm so glad you brought that up because this shows a great difference between Alexandra and the Kingpin. And their goal again was they deliberately left Kingpin out of this show because they didn't want. I would imagine they didn't want it to overshadow Alexandra, and also I would imagine they don't want Kingpin to be their go-to every time.
Well, yeah, that's understandable.
And in doing so, they wanted to make someone who believably was a threat, who could, kind of even rival Wilson Fisk. And we have a moment that exemplifies that in this episode with Madame Gao. We saw that Wilson Fisk is, he was a little subservient to Madame Gao. He showed her great respect, and he knew she was not someone to be trifled with. And importantly, with Madame Gao, as we learned in Iron Fist, and especially with Nobu, even back in, again, season 1 of Daredevil, Wilson Fisk is afraid of the hand. That's fascinating. I'd love to see that explored potentially down the line. But that I'm just saying that said, we know Wilson Fisk knew not to trifle with the hand. Now we're seeing how the hand deals with their own, where Gao is very... Alexandra points out to Gao. They find out about the wall. They find out, okay, this wall, like, maybe we should try approaching this differently because now we're moving up the timetable, and it's basically looking she's very skittish, and she says, Gao, that's the difference between you and me. You're always so quick to rethink. Me, I'm more stubborn.
That's a great line.
And again,
it shows kind of like she's acknowledging her character flaw, but she knows she's using it to her advantage.
Yes, and again, we've seen this proven time and time again. Gao's always like, she's the negotiator. She'll change her plan. Again, she'll play the odds. But again, Alexander's like, hey, I got a plan. I'm going to stick to that plan. I got to move up the timetable. We're still going forward with that plan, darn it.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Oh yeah.
What about the stuff just being seeded in with the hand? Just like I said, we already touched on with Jessica. Kind of the conspiracy angle. Anything else to touch on there?
What's seated here is that White Hat is on cleanup duty. So again, just bridging to our other members of the hand. We have the other guy who hasn't quite been introduced yet, but of our 4. So we have Alexandra, we have Gao, and we have White Hat, who essentially sent his Harlem disciples to they have these cool acid packs, where basically it's like the most efficient way. I mean, Jesse Pinkman and Walter Boy wish they had this episode. In episode 2 of Breaking Bad, let's say. They have these packs that basically they're squirting acid onto the chased bodies that Elektra has killed. So I love how much of a working mechanism this is, Tiki. They're working on the construction. Essentially, they're working on they're digging through the earthquakes. The earthquakes are a byproduct of them digging to find this wall. Meanwhile, they have... White Hat is recruiting people to cover up White Hat's recruiting Harlem youths to cover things up. These just to load things up, like real manual jobs, manual labor type jobs. And Elektra is as Black Sky is sent to kill as many factions of the Chaste as they can, basically limiting it to only Stick. Which again, by the end we reveal that Stick and Alexandra have a history, and again, she's killed all the Chased but Styx, and now Styx alone, which of course intimates that Styx going to need some help. But yes, the hand's holding all the hand is holding.
And Styx also probably going to perhaps need a clever wordplay based escape.
I would imagine so. One could say the hand is holding all the cards, or the best hand. Alexandra is holding the best hand at this poker game.
Hey, Stick, don't let Alexandra hold your hand.
If you hold my hand, I'll slug you.
When the Beatles wrote "I Want to Hold Your Hand" back in 1962. All right, I'll stop.
Anyway, so that's really where we're at with the hand. The point is, Elektra's the big powerhouse, and they're all a fine, well-oiled machine in this episode.
Okay. All right, it's time to move on to Excelsior expectations.
Excelsior.
Now, Dragon, remind me, is this the Dare to be Different or the Moments?
It's a Dare to be Different.
That's what I thought. All right, well, to be honest with you, Dragon, there's not really a ton going on in this episode. It's more sort of like I would say the big selling point of the episode, of course, is the Luke versus Iron Fist fight. Other than that, this episode it's not really a big one for me. Like I said, it's maybe just because I've sort of watched it a few too many times. But what really stuck out to you? I'm curious. Besides the obvious stuff.
Well, right off the gate, I really like, and this is my read on it. But again, with S.J. Clarkson directing, Jessica Jones director, I really did see this is a strong Jessica Jones led episode to me.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, considering we kind of pick up we end on Jessica Jones, and I think there's a lot of Jessica Jones in this episode. And I think I think she drives the plot a lot. So that was a big takeaway, that Jessica, she's not in your face, but she does feel like she's driving the plot. It feels like we're kind of, again, she is kind of our MVP so far into things. And again, I feel is soldiering. I think she's shouldering the plot better than we are with Iron Fist. I feel like Iron Fist is stuck with the plot.
What a big surprise.
Come on, be classy about it. Come on.
No, never.
Okay, well, my point is, again, I think Iron Fist is shouldered with plot, and that he has stuff that has to happen to move the ball forward. I feel Jessica Jones is driving the plot, and I think that's the big difference.
Jessica actively does not want to be involved in the plot, and that's the great thing about her.
Yeah, it's the great irony of the character. Again, she didn't want nothing. She always gets with the character period. She always gets the crap end of the Marvel universe. She gets the bad luck. She gets the bad press. Hey, all the death and the alien invasions and metahumans are raining down upon us in the incident. Hey, let's try to kill Jessica Jones just for that. Yes, I'm looking at you, Gretchen Schwartz.
Dragon, one of the things I like about the episode is unlike a lot of people, I kind of appreciate the slow build to getting to the team, and I don't necessarily think it takes too long to get to the team.
I agree with you there.
And specifically, I really like that by the end of this episode, we have them in pairs, where we clearly have a Luke versus Iron Fist dynamic established. And then, of course, Matt Murdock and Jessica Jones have met up by the end of the episode. So I think there's a really good kind of progression there, where episode 1 is kind of like the, little mini chunks of their own side stories, whereas episode 2 is them slowly coming together. Of course, episode 3 being the culmination of that build up.
I agree with you there. I do love that I do love those pairings. And speaking of pairings, and I think a big appeal of this episode is we have a lot of fun character crossovers. We have not even just our main guys. We have Jerry Hogarth and Foggy Nelson. Since the ending of Daredevil season 2, Jerry is she's working with Foggy, and again, Foggy is a really good kind of budding.
If anything, Dragon, Foggy is kind of the Coulson of this show.
In this one, very much so. I could see he is, because he's interacting with Luke Cage in episode 1. He's interacting.
Yeah.
Honestly, everyone but Danny Rand. Honestly, it's just everyone but
everyone who matters.
All right. Anyway, let's see. Also, just again, kind of with our supporting,
some low blows.
Yeah, come on, man. Save William really messes up. Right? Don't waste them all now.
All right.
Anyway, so we have Jerry and Foggy, we have Jessica Jones and Misty Knight, as we already went through, and we have Danny Rand and Luke Cage, of course, being a biggie. And we get more in the next episode. That's why I'm a little hesitant to say, Jessica Jones and Matt Murdock. However, again, for moments we're also going to get into, so I don't want to say too much about that now. But,
of course.
Let's see. So again, they have the fun character crossovers there. Again, I love how, and this is important with just the characters as they exist now separately before they come together. Or you could say, "Come as you are." Anyway, sorry, not yet. I love how each show's style is very well represented. We have we have Daredevil, like thematically and visually, all the themes, all the stuff we know from those shows are represented in each character. We have the Daredevil struggle, and the action, the way the action is shot on Daredevil is very true to the show, and also kind of the kind of the character struggle, the internal struggle that's represented here. Luke Cage being very much the street level hero, and the investigation going on there feels very Luke Cage-esque. Jessica Jones is very noir. Very, very noir again, dealing with the cops, stealing the evidence, doing all her stuff, being kind of questioned later on. Iron Fist, and again, we do address the Iron Fist faults, are addressed in the interactions he has there. So again, it's a kind of a self-aware fourth wall thing we're doing with Iron Fist there, which I still do appreciate in the writing. I love visually how we use the Daredevil suit to express vigilantism as an addiction. It's a great shot. It's him opening the trunk just because, and again, like seeing, it's less seeing the costume. It's more seeing Matt just wanting to put on the costume.
Yeah, you're right about that.
It's like the addict. Like there's that Alcoholics Anonymous thing where basically you keep the alcoholic chained up in a meeting or something, where basically it's like it's in the room so that you can stare the addiction in the face almost, and say no to it. It's kind of what he's doing there, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. We're building up great intrigue with Alexandra and the hand plot as we kind of went through. We're getting Stick right away. I love that we don't have to wait too long for Stick. Getting like episode 2 Stick. The crossovers feel so classic Marvel again with the biggies that are coming up. And lastly, I love how we pick up where the last episode left off, and that let's just say, I guess I'll save it for when we get to it. Just let's say I love how we pick up previously, just where we left off at the top of this episode.
Sure.
Okay.
All right, so Dragon, let me go ahead and unplug my headphones and turn up my volume, because do you know what time it is? It's time to get into, wait for it, some Netflix Nirvana. Hit it. All right. Oh yeah, that's some good non-copyrighted audio usage right there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did it work?
I heard it, so I guess it worked.
Good. Okay.
It'd be nice that we saw the image, though.
Oh God. I was so focused on pressing play. All right. Well, that could have been timed better. All right.
Oh boy, Fox. Yeah, Netflix Nirvana, as you heard by that awesome music cue. These are the moments that just going to make you want to pump your fist up and say, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's the Marvel Netflix magic at work right there. It's like the culmination of all things Marvel and wonderful. One could say marvelous to simplify the two.
So should we get into our individual moments and build to the main one, or?
Yeah, sure, because everyone knows what the main one's going to be, but let's say some other moments that we really enjoyed.
Okay, so it's interesting, Dragon, because our moments kind of come, we kind of book in the episode with our moment. So my moment starts at the very beginning, where it starts right after the earthquake. It's, Matt Murdock's kind of seeing the aftermath of everything. There's a lot of looting going on. And Dragon, I love how this episode is in a lot of ways about giving people a second chance. We see that with Luke Cage's storyline mostly, and it's kind of exemplified with Matt, where he overhears a group of clearly in over their heads kids trying to loot a convenience store. The convenience store owners being very overzealous about it, grabbing the shotgun and everything, and the kids being trapped, and Matt just sort of just springing to the rescue. And we don't even see the ensuing fight or anything. We just kind of, it just kind of opens on that note. It's like, all right, Daredevil, he has to go out and kick some ass. And then we get the whole like, what are you? What are you?
I tell you, Tiki, again, the red lighting is so prevalent in this shot. That's the thematic thing again with kind of it's kind of an Excelsior expectation, but at the same time, it's just oh my god, it's like we're thematically and visually we're doing all stuff from Daredevil we love, and that again, just that shot at the end where he says, who are you? Because again, it's like Matt catching himself in that moment, and it's the guy's on his side, so like Matt walking away into the fog and disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just being recognized where again he's not in the suit and kind of realizing he's going to put himself at risk there. But again, the idea is less the guy's going to recognize because again he doesn't have a blind man's cane or anything. He beat him pretty senseless pretty fast. So they're not going to realize who he is. But it's Matt realizing. It's ending on that right out the gate, picking up where it left off, and then just ending on that profound question that Daredevil's asking himself this season. If I'm not Daredevil, who am I? And the guy's
exactly.
Who are you? As he disappears into the fog, so he's walking into his own conundrum with that red lighting. Man, it's perfect.
yeah.
Oh, boy, that's great. So speaking of Matt Murdock,
blind Matt Murdock.
Blind Matt Murdock. So I spoke about this a little bit, and I teased a little. A big element I love with this episode, less than the, not including the big kind of like unanimous moment from this episode. I love the crossover appeal, and the reason I love the crossover appeal so much, the moment I'm speaking of, is the very ending. So again, don't get me wrong. Well, I did have my things against Misty Knight. I'm a little iffy on a bit of Misty Knight in the episode towards the end of that scene. The moment that's one of the moments that steals the episode for me. And again, yes, we knew it was coming in the trailer, but who cares? It's just the moment of finally it happened. Where after all this time, Jessica Jones, she's in the interrogation room and she's about to rock Misty with the truth about Elektra, and in that moment, Matt Murdock enters. And Tiki, I've been waiting for this scene for so long. Luke Cage teased this scene so much of just like, I have a lawyer friend who can help. They've teased this scene, and Matt Murdock enters. He's, Jessica Jones, stop talking. Who are you? I'm Matthew Murdock. I'm your attorney. And just the fact that it ends there, it ends with like the ultimate appeal. One of the reasons I love Daredevil as a character, I always loved the old Stan Lee days of Daredevil, where he's lawyer by day, vigilante, roof jumping vigilante by night. But the fact he's a lawyer who can help all the other characters in the Marvel universe. It's like the perfect character for a crossover. You ever need a lawyer? Again, he's the Saul Goodman of the Marvel universe, and it's perfect. He swoops in and he's coming to the legal defense of another Marvel character. I've been waiting years to see that with Daredevil, and finally see it come to fruition. It's also Matt again getting back to his season 1 roots as Matt Murdock. Again, even just as Matt Murdock, it's a great scene. It's just a great crossover ending. It's perfect.
My favorite part of it is just kind of like the cheeky ass smile that he gives right at the very end. Like, yeah, that's right. What are you going to do about it?
I've seen that moment so many times, so many other books where Matt Murdock is called in or he shows up. And again, seeing it realized in this show, in this universe is great.
Okay.
So let's talk about the big prize fight of it all, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, that's right. It's the Cage versus the Fist.
Yes. Basically, the mean right hook up the episode.
That's gotta hurt.
It wasn't very Breaking Bad with the title of this one.
So seriously, this has got to be among the best one-on-one fights in the Marvel Netflix verse.
Oh yeah, it's a great one. Of course, we say one-on-one because again, there are numerous hallways.
Well, yes, of course.
Yes, but wow, yeah, it's just again, I love we see where these characters are coming down. It's the most justified of a hero versus hero fight, I think. Is these two guys that don't know each other, they're coming from completely different worlds. And again, Luke Cage, he's defending a youth of Harlem, where Iron Fist, again, he's kind of jumping in, gun ho. Again, basically they're symbols of their shows in a way, combating each other here. And again, Iron Fist is kind of coming at this fight the wrong way. He does end with like the redeeming quality of Iron Fist, where like the again, I know for like the diehard, fight enthusiasts, they've been let down by Iron Fist, but again, that doesn't really affect Tiki or I. Tiki and I have been kind of like, we're fine with the Iron Fist fighting style, but the point is, we end on the spectacle, which is, him, the kid with the glowing fist when he punches Luke Cage, and it's a historic moment where...
But before that, Dragon, I love the slow-mo quality to everything.
Yes, I love seeing it, and again, this is why Danny... We've hit upon the notion, and we're going to hit upon this more as it goes forward, of course, but that Luke Cage makes Danny Rand a better character when these two have scenes together. They really
yes, absolutely.
He brings out the best in Danny Rand. There's kind of a mentorship quality to their friendship. And again, we're starting right before they're friends. Kind of pulling like a Woody and Buzz. They're enemies before they become best buddies. It's kind of that equivalent where again, we have kind of the slow, movable object, the guy who's just kind of slowing down, saying, "Okay, you don't have to fight me." What I love in this scene, though, is that Danny Rand is very impulsive, he's just kind of coming at fighting, and then as he realizes, okay, this is like an opponent I've never come across before. This is a guy who I can't easily put down, I can't easily defeat, and as the fight goes on, we visually see what the character-wise they're going to be doing for each other. He's making him smarter in the fight. Danny Rand is then using more strategic, more, those slow-mo moves are him making more calculated, smart hits.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Then building to his heavy artillery. And again, the idea is, those are at least kind of stopping Luke Cage in his for a moment, because he's realizing, okay, this guy's getting a little better in his fighting. But oh my god! And of course, we mirror the opening awesome save in Luke Cage, where he saves the save at Genghis Khan's, where the one thug punches Luke and he breaks his wrist in this case.
Right.
When the Iron Fist hits Luke Cage, one of the rare things that could hurt the bulletproof man, he punches Luke square in the face and launches him clear across into a wall.
Oh man. Good stuff.
It's great. This is how you do a forced fight, folks. You make it this fun. You make it also,
like you said, Dragon. I really don't think it's forced at all. I think it's very justified.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry, I'm getting full into that, but yeah, it is super. It is a justified version of that trope. I should say, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Okay, let's move on to inciting incidents.
Inciting incidents.
Come on, Carl. All right.
All right. Oh, Carl, come out to play. Okay, anyway, as much as we love Ernest Luray Harvey, let's talk about some inciting incidents. Of course, kind of the breadcrumbs of the Marvel Universe, if you will. Mainly the Netflix universe, because Marvel just doesn't have the nerve yet. Anyway, so, of course, we have the aftermath of Hell's Kitchen in Harlem, directly after the earthquake, as we cited previously.
Yeah, and then, of course, all the hand stuff, the conspiracy going on and everything like that.
Yep, we have Trish Talk coming into play.
Gotta love it.
Matt and Foggy, worrying over the Daredevil antics, as per usual.
Generally kind of like the side characters connecting up, like Foggy and Hogarth, and... Oh, God, and,
Brad Josie's.
Yes, and Jessica and Misty, of course.
The Daredevil suit, again, we tease it. He hasn't put it on yet, but we tease that it's there in all its glory. Foggy and Marcy, we mentioned that Foggy and Marcy have gotten together.
Stick.
Yep, we got Stick. Of course, Biggie. Turk Barrett.
Oh, yeah. I don't like you now.
This is that great interrogation scene where we just let's speak about Turk Barrett for a minute, just to make sure we get in there.
Yeah.
Okay, that was another scene I meant to put in the Excelsior expectations as well. We'll talk about it here. Just, Turk Barrett, he's almost a Coulson for the Defender. Basically, Claire is actually
he's kind of like the reluctant Coulson.
He is. He's the reluctant Coulson. I know he's not in every he's not in every show, but he's in almost every show, and even like he was in like a comic.
He's in every show that counts.
Well, I mean, he was technically he was in the Jessica Jones comic, so let's just say he was in Jessica Jones technically. I'm just saying I don't want to leave Jessica Jones out in the cold there.
Right, yeah.
Anyway,
I'm sorry, for some reason I just assumed that he was not in Iron Fist.
No, he wasn't. Yeah, he was not in Iron Fist.
Yeah, so like I said, he's in every show that counts.
Yep. All right.
All right.
But yeah, it's we got a pair of dice and just Luke just like drenching them in beer. It's hilarious. And I love that he is that connective glue, and he also gives some. Speaking of which, the bridge from Turk to another note. We do tease some goings on for Luke Cage season 2.
Mm-hmm.
We allude to Shades and Mariah. Shades and Mariah, they've kind of gone dark of late. That might be again, that might be for a number of reasons. That could be like they're playing their hand there. They're trying to be quiet about things for the new Harlem Renaissance. It could be because we know we're getting some new bad guys coming up in Luke Cage. They could have their power usurped at the moment, or possibly they've skipped town because of these new players. For the time being, skip town. It could be. So I'm saying we have some plates spinning for Luke Cage season 2 with Turk's little scene here as well. I love that the construction company ties to Nobu, which ties into the plot line we had established way back in Daredevil season 1, where Nobu's buying land from Wilson Fisk, and that's the land they're working with Midland Circles. That's Fisk technically put this into play with Nobu.
Yeah, that's a good catch. I wouldn't have noticed that.
Let's see. So again, all the chase had been killed off. Shaft was killed off in the first episode. That was the guy that Danny and Colleen ran into in overseas. Well, let's see. Again,
his name is Shaft.
Anyway, let's see. So again, Shades of Mariah ghosted. John Raymond, he constructed the building for the Hand, and again, he killed himself to not be killed by Elektra. Didn't want to give her the satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
He gave us a liability, of course, led to a suicide. Let's see. Matt meeting Jessica Jones.
Did I mention that John Raymond was the first person voted out of Survivor Thailand?
I don't think you did.
He was a pastor.
Weird. Oh, I should have mentioned this during Netflix Nirvana, but this is important. Matt Murdock meeting Jessica Jones. That as much as that is all the stuff I said about that. I still support, and that's why I love that scene. But the thing I neglected to mention specifically is that scene, Matt Murdock meeting Jessica Jones, is pulled from Alias #3, like the 3rd issue of the Jessica Jones comic. Like she's in an interrogation room, and Matt Murdock is like lifted direct, like panel for panel lifted from that comic. That's cool. Let's see. Bad stuff happening in Jessica Jones' apartment. It's like it's a cursed apartment again. Her bad luck again. Like her apartment is still damaged from season 1. By the way, I love that. Like nothing has been fixed at all from her fight with Nuke. Season 1. Speaking of locations, we have the Chikara dojo. The main Iron Fist location. Right. Colleen's dojo. We meet Misty's new boss, Captain Schreiber. He's the new boss since she's got like a new boss in this new district of New York. Again, we referenced Luke Cage getting punched in episode 1 of Luke Cage. There's a cover-up on Trish Talk about the earthquake. Again, most likely Hands doing. And lastly, again, we have our main pairings going forward here. Our main pairings for the season, Jessica Jones and Matt Murdock, and Danny Rand, Luke Cage. So that's about it.
Okay. All right, Dragon. So with that out of the way, we asked the most daring question, the most important question of the evening. Are you ready? I don't think you can handle it, but we'll do it anyways. Who's for Chinese?
Who's for Chinese?
So who's for Chinese, of course, just being final thoughts. So, Dragon, like I said, I've kind of pounded this episode into my skull with all the rescheduling we've had to do, but I like this episode. I don't love it. I kind of I feel like it's sort of a give or take where, it's we have the slower pace to kind of introduce everyone. It is nice to have them, have the tag teams at least through the end of the episode. I feel like at the same time though, this episode maybe could have been split in half, and maybe like at the start of episode 3 instead of the end of episode 3, we could have had everyone together. Because really, I feel like this episode, there's a lot of plot exposition, which is sort of like the main gripe I have against the episode. It feels like, I don't know, Dragon, like I feel like with Netflix, it's like they really can't win with the Marvel stuff because no matter what, everything's been slow paced thus far. Like Defenders feels a little faster paced, but it still has like some pacing issues to it, which is kind of my main problem with this second episode here. Is it just doesn't feel like, it kind of feels like we're spinning the wheels a little bit. But by the same token, it is a pretty solid entry that has, a really good fight scene, which is obviously the main highlight. So yeah, that's about it.
For me, I think it's a solid continuation of the build-up from episode 1. We have it's kind of the crossover before the big team up. That's kind of what it's kind of the role it serves. It's I love that it's still committing to the individual styles, and that's the thing to appreciate about it. Look, I mean, honestly, I see your point, Tiki, about dragging a little bit, but I don't feel it happens in the beginning. I feel that happens like towards kind of the midpoint. So I don't think we're quite at the drag point, for at least for me. Because again, honestly, the only vaguely slow point is the Iron Fist stuff, and again, that's really kept to a minimum when you really look at it. Like, we don't dedicate that much time. It just feels a little like, again, that's the exposition part. Again, Iron Fist is subtle with the exposition, where Jessica Jones is driving, it's kind of driving plot. I love the mystery of the hand that is unfolding. So again, we have some build there. So again, it's a solid episode, but it's not a huge standout. Again, aside from the big moments that are really towards the very end. Again, with Iron Fist versus Luke Cage and Daredevil. I love ending it there too. I mean, that was cool. So again, it's a solid one. It's a solid chapter 2.
All right. Now we separate until next time when Netflix's New Yorkers summon us to mull over the Marvel microcosm that is
The Defenders.
I don't like you now.